I'm Daniel, the past life regressionist, and it's time to begin.
Lift off and the clock has started.
This is Timeless Spirituality. Enjoy, you can if you tell. Hey everyone, welcome back to Timeless Spirituality. It is now time for part 2 of astrology as a spiritual path. I highly recommend going and checking out part 1 because, just go check out part 1 first. And coming up a little bit later within the month will be an additional episode with Jim where he's going to be doing a natal chart reading for a buddy of mine by the name of Jeff Macalino. So, there's going to be more Jim on the podcast. And with that, I highly recommend going to Jim's website and signing up for his newsletter. That way you'll be notified the next time he has a new class. I highly recommend taking his astrology class. It's something. It changed my life in so many ways. And yes. So with all that said, if you would like to book a regression with me to discover who, when, and where you have been throughout time, you can reach me on Instagram at The Past Life Regressionist, or you can go ahead and book through my website, thepastliferegressionist.com. And now, it's time to begin. Well, what do you think it will take to break through to the masses? Like, what will be that catalyst?
I talk about this with my close friends. If I'm right about the nature of reality, and now we got to talk about Neptune a bit. Neptune is essentially the experience that we're all connected with each other and with universal consciousness. The implication of this is that one individual matters. This conversation in the outskirts of the United States and of the world, this little podcast matters. It's a seed that's introducing these ideas, these forms of inquiry. That's all we got to do is keep being ourselves and fulfill our purpose, and it will expand in ways we cannot understand or foresee. That may be an unsatisfactory answer to you, but it's actually the answer that I have for me. I truly believe the individual matters. And so when an individual is living the law of their being, it does move out like a ripple in a lake. We may never know how those new ideas expand because we're not in control of that process. But there's all kinds of evidence that it's real, but it may not be satisfying to the ego that wants to know, what are my results? What are the results of what I did, what I created? We may not know.
We never will.
We probably won't.
Mm-mm.
So as long as we're acting authentically according to our nature, that's literally all we can do. But I do have a lot of hope and optimism and some proof that it does matter, that it does spread in ways I cannot understand.
Well, I mean, even with this little podcast, it shows me in my stats where it's being listened to around the world. And I mean, it still blows my mind, some of these places, some of these just, because sometimes we even go down to city. Some countries, and look, I consider myself a geography buff, but there are some countries on there I haven't even heard of. Like Wakanda.
There is a Wakanda in our imagination.
Yeah.
This is, again, when a person understands the value of archetypal thinking, I can say Wakanda exists and be serious about it because it exists in our imagination, which is very powerful. It influences events in this world. Mm-hmm. So it's, in a sense, it's not a joke.
But nonetheless, even, with this little podcast, who knows who's listening to it in one of those countries? Not Wakanda, but those real countries that exist in our real world. But I know what you mean, even with it existing in our imagination. Right. And the conversations that person is having, and the conversations that person who heard that conversation that other person had first heard on Timeless Spirituality, who they're having those conversations with, in that ripple effect that goes out and out and out, and how that idea really takes hold
Right.
and gets out there into our collective consciousness. I've let go of this need to see what my actions are creating out there and the impact that I'm having on the world, because I'm never going to know. And even the pursuit of that was stupid, doing it for that reason. I just have to be and be okay with a micro effect having a macro result.
Plus, your efforts will accumulate.
I hope so.
You keep going. I believe that as long as you're be authentically Daniel, it will grow of its own accord in its own time.
Now I got to take the claws out then. Really got to grow. But with that, let's get to Pluto. What comes up for you with Pluto?
Well, I take time always when I'm talking in my classes about Pluto to really take time to help them understand what I'm talking about. Because by definition, to me, Pluto represents the principle of not expansion, which is Jupiter, but intensification. It operates in ways that are extreme and intensified, amplified, in order for something that's unconscious to become conscious. It's called transformation. And the changes that it brings about, including the destruction, have a purpose of allowing for something truly new to emerge. So if there's an old belief system, it has to die, and that dying is resisted. Ukraine wants to be independent of Russia. Russia's resisting that. It fears the loss of its own identification. And all Ukraine wants is the freedom to be independent. Look at the reaction. That's a microcosm of what I mean. Pluto doesn't care if we live or die. It only cares that a new seed be born, so-called through the ashes.
Well, even with that, if memory serves me correct, the day that Russia invaded Ukraine back in 2022, in February of 2022, Pluto was having its first pass directly for its Pluto return with the USA. And that, I don't know, even when that happened, I'm like, oh, this can't be good ultimately. But how would you say that through the lens of transpersonal astrology? Even though I know it's more of a world event, but how would you explain that on the world stage through transpersonal astrology?
The old considerations, the models of how reality should be, are very powerful. It's a model of reality that's not thought of as a model. It's how things should be. So resistance, when there's an attempt to change it, is also a live or die proposition. If the old viewpoints are to ever change, they're going to have to be attacked, not by action, but by just simply being. So, for example, they want to get rid of gay marriage that were fought so hard to attain. Let's go back to how things were, because that was better then. Well, that's part of the Pluto process, because resistance is the heat that allows for transformation to take place. But there's a certain way of being that Pluto's already introduced that will win. It must win,
And what is that way?
because diversity is part of our growth. I think that diversity, I don't know if you're familiar with Terence McKenna. Well, he did a lot of experiments with psilocybin and other things and experienced other entities. One of the things, his biggest takeaway was that humanity is moving toward greater and greater diversity, and all kinds of new types of living, of being, are emerging. I see this happening in the world compared to when I was growing up in the 50s and 60s. And whether it be gay rights, whether it be transgender, most people that I know don't care. Let people be. Well, that's not the prevailing view politically, is it? Stop it. Got to stop it. So when you talk about Pluto, you're talking about radical transformation. You're talking about a movement toward a new kind of existence or being. That will be resisted. It's part of the process.
For the USA, going through its Pluto return and having the direct hit a couple of years ago in the early degrees of Aquarius, Would you say that the Pluto return will really last while Pluto is going through Aquarius? That it's going to be felt for the duration of that
The
journey?
resistance, okay, a conjunction like the Pluto return is the beginning of a new cycle. A Pluto orbit is 250 years.
Also, for everyone, the conjunction is when the planet is on top of the other planet, or in this case, when Pluto returned to where it was the moment that the USA was formed.
Right. So this is the first Pluto return the United States has ever had.
Because Pluto takes approximately 248 years,
Yeah.
46, 48 to go around the sun
Right.
once.
So we're literally at 250 years since the Declaration of Independence.
Hmm.
Well, this is Pluto, exactly what's happening. And the resistance to all of this transformation is what we're seeing politically. You heard about the portraying of Obama
Mm-hmm. In the
as
in me,
monkeys.
yeah. So everyone, we're recording this on February 7th, 2025.
Yeah, tell everybody what happened.
That our president reposted a meme or a picture or a video of the Obamas as apes or monkeys,
Right.
like their faces on top of.
But it was put out by his administration.
Yeah.
Unheard of, right? Horrific.
Yeah,
What,
horrible.
what
I mean,
what president would ever do that? As part of the Pluto return, that is representing a defiant act of resistance to progress, to where color doesn't matter. He's a racist, misogynistic bastard, but he's a reflection of the so-called good old days of slavery. That's the world he'd like to live in. He'd like the rest of us to live in it too.
well, sure looks that way.
Well,
I mean, I can't claim to know what's in his heart, but his actions speak louder than words a lot of the time. I also think he's an evil genius, frankly. Do I disagree with I mean, not to go too political, I don't disagree with everything he's done. Most part, 98% of the stuff he's done, yeah. But I don't know. For that one, I'm not going to lie. I see that as it just being him distracting from some of the bigger things that could be on his plate right now or out there in the world. Distracting from that big release that just came out.
of course, the Epstein files.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of it. By the same token, I don't think he's lying about it. This is his nature. My point is that's reflecting the reality of many Americans who are resisting the changes that are happening and will continue to happen that cannot be stopped. There's a ex-congressman, Adam Kinzinger
Mm-hmm. Kinzinger,
who
yeah.
left Congress. He said, in 10 years, I believe that all the people who voted for Trump will lie and say they never did. They will look past it and say, I didn't do that. What he's saying also, though, is that the changes that are happening, that they're resisting, are inevitable. In a way, they already have happened. And now we're pushing back and trying to stop something that is inevitable. That's the meaning of the outer planets, in my view. It's happening. And by May, when all of the outer planets are in either air or fire, for good, Uranus will be in Gemini. I think you're going to see the beginning of the real changes, the beginning.
Well, I know you can't make a concrete prediction, but what do you foresee those changes being?
Well, I'm really biased, but ultimately, I'm not going to lie. I hope for the impeachment of the president. I mean, by impeachment, I mean not just impeachment, but conviction.
Mm-hmm.
He's in the way of progress. He's trying to do everything he can to stop it. And his cruelty seems to know no bounds. And if that's radical to the listener, so be it.
Well, like I've said this on the podcast before. I'm not a supporter. Even after our conversation right now, I mean, I'm not going to say no, I don't agree with this stuff at all that he's doing. I think it's horrible. It's repulsive. It's just wrong. It's cruel and it's wrong. And I think that my pinky has more integrity than, well, him. That's neither here nor there now, but I can't also help but wonder if he's serving his purpose, that, he was put there by God or the collective consciousness for a reason.
Perhaps in the sense.
Doesn't mean I need to support it, though.
Right. This is kind of part of the process I mentioned. But Olivia and I are in the middle of an interesting problem right now. It's a result of this. I have a neighbor. I've lived in this place for 7 years. We get along just fine. And right now he's building a wall between our two properties. And I went to him. It's a really big wall. It's on his property, but it's touching mine. And I said, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this?" And his family's from Russia, and they've been here long enough that they're having kids and grandkids and so on who are American and speak perfect English and all that stuff. And he said, "Well, one of these days you won't be here. And I don't feel safe when knowing that somebody else that I don't know and cannot trust is moving in." My point to you is that I believe that Trump has created an environment of fear and danger that's causing people to separate when they could be neighbors, so to speak, and literally in my case. So he's got to build this wall to protect himself and his grandchildren from who? Not me, from other, the mysterious other person who might go into my property. That's the tenor. That's the environment that's being created right now. You see what I mean? That's the horror of it. It's happening on a neighborhood level in ways that we don't necessarily see.
So, what would you say to someone who, because I think there are a lot of people, I think you were talking about even before, with the fundamentalist Christians, who a lot of them believe that he was chosen by God, that Trump was chosen by God, and therefore that's why they support him.
Right.
Then you go to like what I said a few minutes ago, where there's that part of me that's like, you know what? I do believe in God, and I believe that God is really putting things in motion and that God does have a plan. I don't have to like that plan, but I do believe that Trump is serving his purpose. But then I'm like, but I don't have to be okay with it. So how would you speak to someone who is so driven by the conviction of that belief that, oh, he was placed there by God, to help them see that maybe that there's something else to it?
Well, I'd have to be able to have a conversation. This interview started with a discussion of belief systems. And the danger of a belief system is that it is thought of as fact,
Mm-hmm.
but it isn't. But it's believed to be fact. If a person's belief is locked in, can you talk to them?
You can talk to them. They probably won't listen though.
But they probably won't listen, and they probably won't talk to you at all. I listen from time to time to various influencers who interview and speak to conservatives, and a lot of it is nonsensical. It's one belief system after another being expressed to the influencer, to the podcaster. So if a person doesn't recognize their belief system as a belief system, they are stuck in it and you can't really talk to them. By the time you can talk to them, it means that the psychological structure of that belief system is already breaking down. That allows a person to begin to be open. And those are the people I'd love to talk to. If a person begins, you see, to feel that I'm too rigid here, I need to consider something bigger than myself, then you can talk to them. But until then, you're wasting your breath.
Do you think
There,
there's anything that he's done that you support?
it's irrelevant.
How come?
The things that he's done are less important than the influence he's had on the United States and the world, which is extremely negative. Are you aware that many of the skiers for the United States in Italy are apologizing to the world about the United States?
Mm-hmm.
What? In my lifetime, this is unheard of. They're literally going to another country to criticize and apologize. It's not the world I grew up in.
Well, I mean, yeah, and I do think he is a poison. I'm not, I'm not advocating on his behalf whatsoever. But I don't think people are absolute. And I think he's 99% idiot, asshole, horrific monster. What
That's fair.
about that 0.01% or 0.1%?
That's fair, Daniel. That's fair. I'm not disagreeing with that a bit. I'm just saying if you're talking about can you talk to them, you can try. But don't be surprised if it goes one in one ear, out the other, or completely refuse to talk. Their minds are made up. And again, to get back to our previous discussion, When people have rigid belief systems that they do not recognize as a belief system, you can't talk to them. That psychological structure is solid. And again, the outer planets will break that structure up. But in the meantime, we're stuck with what we got.
So would you say your view is a belief system?
Again, if we define it as a belief system, the way I've been defining it, I don't know what is and what is true in any absolute sense.
Hmm.
I'm just saying that the facts are what I see, that I'm seeing them as what's true and truly happening. But I'm content with aspiring to something higher, which I use astrology for, and that's where I pay attention. And in my daily interaction with people, I'm open to everybody.
So for the audience right now, Jim, let me challenge him there. I think there are so many teachers out there who will not allow you to challenge them. And I just say, run the other way. Run the other way. And I mean, look, I don't know about you, Jim, but I'm learning a lot even through this interaction right now. I mean, my mind is just going in so many directions. Like even as you're speaking, I keep jumping to this feeling or this thought of, is there a universal standard of morality? Because I have the way that I view the world. And just like I stick to what I said about him. I think it's wrong, but I don't know. Because how do I know at the end of the day that killing isn't wrong? I view killing as wrong. I think the overwhelming majority of society views killing as wrong. But what if there isn't a universal standard of morality? And I'm really just operating off that belief that I don't think you should kill people. I think it's wrong. I think it's wrong. I don't think we should do it. And even if it is right, yeah, I'm not going to partake in that because I still have my moral conviction that it's wrong based on my universal standard of morality. Because, of course, I am the center of the universe and that what I say goes. And if I think it's wrong, then it's wrong. So, screw everyone else who thinks other than the way that I do. But I mean, so I just want to thank you for even letting me challenge you there because I don't get the feeling you're offended by it.
No.
And I have encountered people who are offended by that.
You and I agree on one thing for sure, the value of inquiry.
Mm-hmm.
If I get a question, it helps with the process of inquiry or discourse. So every time I get asked a question, especially if it causes me pause, I get a chance to work through something that I might not have thought of before.
Mm-hmm.
So why would I be offended? It's not a matter of agree or disagree. It's a matter of communicating with you about things that matter to you, things that you take seriously, not as a fact, but as something worthy of thought, worthy of discussion, worthy of inquiry. That's wonderful. The more human beings interact in this way, the more we'll evolve and grow.
I agree. I think it's also how do we utilize these tools? Because I look at something like philosophy, in addition to astrology, and I see philosophy as something that could be weaponized. If you teach a college student how to debate in a philosophical manner and sound smart, then they have the potential to influence minds if they're driven by ego and in the wrong ways that from my foundation, I would deem to be incorrect and wrong. I'm not also the arbiter of what's right and wrong, except in my own universe, which I'm at the center of. But I feel the same way with astrology, that these are tools that put in the wrong hands have the potential to do destruction and to really steer someone in the wrong way. And something I've thought about, and I met you, Jim, we just celebrated, I think, our 9-year anniversary. If I remember, it was at the end of January of 2017.
Oh my gosh.
When I was a wee lad, still at the tail end of my Saturn return. And over that time, I've thought about astrology. I've thought about past life regression. I've thought about channelers. I've thought about mediumship. And I operated with this philosophy that why would God allow us to have these tools if God didn't want us to use them? But as time has gone on and I've evolved, I've then asked myself the same question about the components that are used to build a weapon. Because if God gave us astrology, past life regression, and so on and so forth, then God also gave us those things, or, collective consciousness, universal. I'm just using God right now just to kind of sum it up. But again, everyone, whatever you're comfortable with, terminology wise. By the way, I don't know if you remember, you couldn't even really get me to use the word God when I was teaching or taking your class. So I evolved a little bit.
Yeah.
But then I've had to ask myself, just because we can doesn't mean we should. Because just because we can build weapons doesn't mean we should. Just because we can use a system of astrology doesn't mean we should. Just because we can do past life regression doesn't mean we should. So what would you say to the just because we can doesn't mean we should when it comes to astrology?
Well, the distinction that you're making is fantastic to me. The distinction between a tool and its use. I mean, right now, and ever since technology began to increase 150 years ago, we've been faced with the conflict between its use and the usefulness. And I think a society has to begin to really focus on what you're asking about, to constantly debate and discuss the difference between the tool and how we use it in a constructive way, not a destructive way, not something to be manipulated. But human beings will do both. We know that. That's where you get into morality or ethics. Ethics, I use the word ethics instead of morality. Ethics is what we're discussing right now, this minute, you and I, right now.
Mm-hmm.
You're asking ethical questions. And a society that's constructive is going to always ask these questions constantly, hour after hour, day after day, to weigh in balance. Making the unconscious conscious is another way to use that phrase of Jung's. So as long as people make that distinction and constantly debate and discuss how the tool is being used, whether it's AI now or anything else, then we have a chance to successfully do it without destruction. But that's how we would do it. We have to discuss it openly. You don't want too much power in the hands of one or two. That stifles discussion. Duh. We have to have debate. We have to have discussion, open-minded discussion. And if we're afraid to do that, if we're defensive, then that kills the discussion. Have you and I had a discussion today?
I think we've had many sub discussions of a discussion, but ultimately, yeah, I think we've had a discussion today.
Yeah, it feels that way, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the only requirement for that is openness, the ability to present one's ideas, listen to the other person's ideas, and go back and forth. That leads to sound decisions when the time for a decision comes. Without that, it's unlikely sound decisions will be made.
Our current world being that example.
Of course.
Well, with Pluto going through Aquarius, do you think a sense of sensibility may come back?
Well, Aquarius rules groups, and I'm thinking it will produce a lot of different groupings that will take away from, in a good way, from many central authorities. The whole phenomenon of influencers is an example of that. The internet is giving us all kinds of so-called influencers.
Mm-hmm.
I guess what I would encourage all influencers to do is what we're discussing right now, which is to maintain the willingness to inquire rather than constantly defend what they already think, to talk openly with people who disagree and then make up your mind. You never know. Some people that have their minds made up will be influenced by a good discussion. You never know. But if you're willing, and this is like, to me, one of the gifts of many of the signs, if you're willing to interact with another without expectation, you never know what the effect will be. But if your motives are good, your thinking is clear, whatever chance you have to influence the other positively is enhanced. That's all we can do. That's our freedom.
You're talking Sag or Pisces there?
I'm talking well, first of all, it's my nature as a Sag rising to say it this way, but it's partly Libra,
Oh, I was off on that one.
the willingness to listen to other, to include other in one's thinking, and so on. Each sign has its gifts, has its positives. And the essence of what I teach is to emphasize what those are.
Yeah, you're not the teacher that says stay away from dating a Virgo.
Oh my gosh. That's just silly.
Taurus and Virgo don't go together. I don't know if that's true or not.
No, I don't.
So, final thoughts about your book. Anything else you want to leave the listener with?
The only thing that I've learned is that I hope people read it to the end. All of it is meant to be building toward an end. My suggestion for who we are, where we're going, and how we could live in a more creative way. And that would be my hope, is that the reader will read it to the end.
So, Jim, are you ready for the Saturn game?
I don't know what that is.
So, you ready for it?
Yeah, I'm ready.
So, here's the Saturn game. In this little baggie, I have 4 periods of time. And I'm going to pull one of them out and ask you a question with it.
Oh, interesting.
You'll see I'm mixing it up and pulling my hand out to maintain the integrity of the game. So you see me putting it back in right now.
Okay.
Mixing around. I don't know what I'm going to pick. Last time I pulled my hand out. Now this time, Jim, how have you grown in the last day?
It's always, I don't monitor that sort of thing very much, but for fun, I would say that, how have I grown in the last few hours? Because I get something from this interview too. And where we have gone round and round is the value of inquiry, of impartial inquiry, and of openness to discussion. And I think it's a very transformative thing. When 2 people can discuss something like you and I have, I think it's transformative and fulfilling. I feel good about our discussion.
Well, I appreciate that. I do too.
The question is, what have I learned? I've learned about the value of openness again, and openness to another, and openness to inquiry. I have enjoyed being asked questions I haven't thought about. Some of your questions I haven't thought about before. So I like that. It makes me grow.
I'm glad I could help. You've done that for me in many ways. Yeah, again, I want to thank you for everything. I know I've been a royal pain in your ass throughout the years, but nonetheless, yeah, just thank you for helping mold me. And point in case, we were talking about just the effect of planting the seed. And, that lesson that you taught me, the difference between belief and knowing, how that changed things for me in that moment was looking at my beliefs that I thought were facts and being like, wait, this is a belief system. And then in turn, spending a few years evaluating all of those beliefs that I thought were facts and getting to that point where I always ask myself, is this a belief or is it a fact? And in turn, this podcast was launched in 2021, and I'm still bringing up the difference between belief and knowing all the time. And people have talked about that and told me what they've learned about the difference between belief and knowing by listening to the podcast. Then they go out and have that conversation and so on and so forth. So everyone, either thank Jim or hate him for it. I thank him for it. And this thing I'm just on repeat about the difference between belief and knowing. People have also commented on this, how I hyper focus on language and terminology. Well, Jim helped me with that. Another one was the example of some but not all. That was a game changer for me too, because the some but not all notion was saying this always happens. This person always does that. This always happens. No. Sometimes that person does it. They don't always do it. Sometimes they do it. This doesn't always happen or happens. Sometimes it happens. And once I was able to view it through that lens, it's like I was able to relax a little bit. Because sometimes it happens. It doesn't always happen. Chill. It's fine. This person's still a pain in the ass most of the time. Not all the time. Sometimes. So looking at language and terminology is one of those things that just, I don't know, I think it's a game changer. And I still go back to the way you pitched that class, the gateway to mysticism. Like, why the fuck are we talking about some but not all? How is this going to be the gateway to mysticism? Also, I've told the story about shadow work on the show. And now when you talked about shadow work and we're going around the circle saying what it means to us, I'm like, that's ridiculous. Why would I do shadow work? And also it's, the irony is spiritual bypassing was talked about, I think the week before or 2 weeks before, and not realizing the spiritual bypassing that I was doing at the time, because my reasoning for saying shadow work was a waste of time was because I knew my purpose. Why would I focus on shadow work when I knew my purpose? That was just going to take away from me doing my part to help uplift the collective consciousness and elevate it to a new level. What an idiot I was. A young wee lad who still has a young wee lad who still has a lot of growing to do, and at the ripe age of 39. And I think that that's the really important, how do I put it? Those things that seem so insignificant, I think are the biggest lessons of all, the biggest game changers, some but not all. The difference between belief and knowing. Come on. Really? That's the gateway to mysticism. But what I learned about that, and I'm still, I think, on that path to whatever mysticism is. But I don't think you can get to mysticism without learning the fundamentals of what it means to be a decent human and how to look at the world through an objective and philosophical lens.
Right.
So everyone listening, go out there and sign up for your 6-week course with the person who is going to teach you how to levitate, in a 1-hour video session over YouTube, and let me know how that goes. And, when they teach you the tools to being a mystic, also in the 7-week course or a 4-week course, for $17.99, or go and learn about the difference between believing and knowing, and some but not all. And I'll let you know when I'm levitating.
You got it.
Everyone, this is Jim. Jim, where can everyone reach you and where can they find you?
I can be found through my website, www.shareastrology.com. And the way to reach me will be through that website.
And really briefly, what's the difference between your class and a traditional class in our new sphere now of, I'll just say, to me, a traditional class is where you do a 5-week course, 1 hour a week. Yeah. It could be a live course or pre-recorded videos. So what's the difference between your course and something like that?
Right now, I don't have any pre-recorded classes. I have very small classes, maximum of 9 students. They're very interactive. Essentially, I teach from beginning more of a transpersonal astrology approach. So even people who have some astrological knowledge, I do start from the so-called beginning. But the concepts that I'm introducing are new to even fairly experienced students. But I deliberately keep my classes small so that there's plenty of time for interaction, discussion, like you and I have had. Even our little discussion is a model of how I teach. Mm. So I present certain data, they ask questions, but I engage in inquiry every step of the way. My job is to help a person realize that these archetypal principles are alive, real, that can be experienced. My job is to help them do that. So my entire structure of my classes have that intention.
What I really appreciated about it was we all got to know each other in class. Yes. And whatever the given lesson was, you would put all of our charts individually up on a projector and you would teach us how it was playing out in the chart. And then everyone would talk about their experiences, some more than others. When I say some more than others, I was not one of those people who usually talked about that. It was one of those ways that I needed to grow. But you learn about the energies through everyone else and the way that they express those energies, and also hearing about what's going on in their lives. So again, I just want to thank you for pushing me to be a little more open and vulnerable, because I was such a shell back then. I'm like, no, I don't want to talk about this. No. But I think through those nudges, I have a podcast. From time to time, I get open and vulnerable. So that's what I just really appreciated about the way that you taught. Was it wasn't just learning from the book, or this is what Saturn is, this is what Neptune is, what Venus is. These are the energies. Now you get to see them at play. That's how it felt very different to me. So I thought that was really cool.
Right. That's the idea. It really is wonderful to get the feedback from you, Daniel.
Thank you. And with that, I haven't fully grown yet. So anyone, if you do want to sign up for one of Jim's classes, I'm not getting a cut or anything like that. I just fully believe in what Jim is doing, but I still have a lot of growing to do, and I still need to work on my ego a bit, but I'm not there yet. So tell him that you heard him on Timeless Spirituality.
Hey, thank you.
Fellow time travelers, your journey through time awaits you. Just want to thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. And if you're interested in discovering who, when, and where you have been throughout time, and you'd like to book a session with me, just go ahead and send me a message on Instagram at The Past Life Regressionist, or you can reach me through my website, yourpastliferegressionist.com.